Hello, and welcome back to our channel. The Ottoman Empire in its twilight seemed like a dying star. The triumphant drums of conquest had long fallen silent, the cannons rusted on the city walls, and the vibrant life of Topkapi Palace had faded into a whisper of memory. But not all fires are extinguished by the coming of night. Some smolder beneath the ashes, waiting for a wind to breathe life into them once more. The lineage of Hurrem Sultan, her spiritual daughters, had not vanished. Their names were no longer etched into stone or sung by court poets, but their influence remained. They lived in hushed conversations, in decisions made behind veiled curtains, in the subtle tremble of a quill signing a royal decree. Men believed they ruled alone, but history continued to move to the rhythm of women's unseen hands. As the 18th century dawned, the empire was searching for its soul. Sultans came and went, each burdened by the legacy of their ancestors. The harem, once the very heart of imperial power, had transformed. It was no longer the forge of rulers, but a quiet sanctuary of memory. And yet, from within its golden latticed walls, a new kind of woman began to emerge. Not a warrior queen, but a thinker, an artist, a diplomat of silence. One such woman was Rabia Sultan, the consort of Sultan Ahmed III. Her husband's reign is remembered as the Tulip Era, a strange and beautiful time when the empire, weary of war, turned its gaze toward beauty. Tulips bloomed across Istanbul like scattered jewels, fountains sang in marble gardens, and poetry replaced the clang of swords. The palace, once a fortress of intrigue, became a haven for art and pleasure. But beneath this glittering facade, unease was growing. The empire's borders were shrinking, its enemies were multiplying, and whispers of rebellion grew louder by the day. Rabia Sultan watched as her husband lost himself in luxury, as his ministers grew rich while the common people starved. And so quietly she began to act. Through her charities she built schools for women, the first of their kind since the days of Hürrem. In her salons, she gathered poets and philosophers who spoke not of war, but of knowledge and enlightenment. And when the Janissaries rose in revolt, she defied the court by hiding fugitives within her own palace quarters, protecting them under the authority of her position. Rabia was no conqueror, no queen in the grand tradition of the past, yet her defiance carried Hürrem's fire. It was not the fire that burns cities down, but the fire that keeps the light of civilization alive within them. But even the gentlest fire can inspire fear. When the revolt breached the palace gates, Rabia was blamed for her husband's downfall. Sultan Ahmed III was deposed and she was exiled to Edirne. Her gardens were abandoned, her voice silenced. Yet, history remembers her as the woman who gave the empire its last, beautiful breath before the long descent into darkness. After Rabia, powerful women seemed to vanish from the imperial record. The harem became a relic, a museum of memories. But behind the walls, the line of Hürrem's daughters endured, quiet, invisible, waiting. It would be nearly a century before another woman rose to such prominence. Her name was Pertevnil Sultan, consort of Mahmud II and mother of Sultan Abdulaziz. She lived in a world undergoing a seismic shift. Europe was industrializing, and empires were now built not with swords, but with machines. The Ottomans, desperate to modernize, began tearing down their old traditions, and the harem was one of the first institutions to be reformed. Yet Pertevnil clung to the old ways with an iron will. She saw herself not just as a mother or a widow, but as the guardian of the empire's soul. While reformers preached progress, she spoke of faith. While ministers sought alliances with Britain and France, she sought the delicate balance that had once held the empire together. She built schools, mosques, and hospitals, not for her own glory, but for the preservation of her culture. Her most famous creation, the magnificent Pertevniyal Valide Mosque in Aksaray, stands as a final glorious jewel of imperial grace amid the rush of modernization. When her son, Sultan Abdulaziz, faced a rebellion from his own ministers, it was Pertevniyal who confronted them. A woman veiled in black, trembling with age, but utterly unbroken. "Do not forget," she warned them. that this empire was built by hands that once wore bracelets, not armor. But her son was betrayed. He was deposed and died mysteriously. Some say by his own hand, others say by the hands of those who feared him. When his body was brought before her, Pertevnial did not weep. She only whispered, "Hurrem, you warned us. The fire burns all who touch it." The world was changing too fast for any Valid Sultan to control. The age of queens was over. The empire was crumbling, not from the intrigues of women, but from the greed of men and the crushing weight of modernity. Yet in its final twilight, one last flame appeared, a woman who would carry Hurrem's legacy into a new era. Her name was Hurrem Sultan. Born a Georgian slave, she rose to become the consort of Mahmud II and the mother of Sultan Abdulmajid I. Where others saw only decline, she saw an opportunity for rebirth. Where others clung rigidly to tradition, she embraced progress, but on her own terms. Hurrem built hospitals, established the empire's first modern medical school, and opened charitable foundations that would outlast every war and every ruler to come. She was a woman of deep faith, yet she understood the power of science and knowledge. She walked a path between two worlds, the Ottoman and the modern, the Islamic and the scientific. In finding that balance, she revived the very fire that Hurrem had once kindled in the heart of the empire. When she died, all of Istanbul mourned her as the mother of the nation. Her legacy endures today in the hospitals that still bear her name, symbols of a time when power meant service and rule meant responsibility. But by then the Ottoman Empire was gasping its last breaths. The sick man of Europe, as it was called, was fading. The world that Hurrem had known, of powerful sultans, grand harems, and glittering palaces, was vanishing forever. And yet, even in its dying light, the empire produced one final daughter of fire. Her name was Nadziketa Kadın, the wife of the last Sultan Mehmed VI. She lived to witness the empire's final heartbreaking collapse. From the windows of Dolmabahce Palace, she watched as foreign armies marched into Istanbul. The crescent flag of the Ottomans was lowered for the last time. After 6 centuries of glory, the empire was no more. Nadziketa was offered safety, a life in exile, and the comfort of silence. But she refused to leave until every last orphan in her care was rescued and safe. When the royal family was finally banished, she carried nothing with her. No jewels, no silks, only a small box of letters written by the women who came before her. Among them, a note said to have been penned by Turhan Sultan centuries earlier. "The fire of our line is not in palaces. It is in the hearts of those who remember." As she sailed away from Istanbul, her city fading into the mist, Nadziketa read those words and smiled through her tears. The empire had fallen, but the fire lived on. Years later, as the Republic of Turkey rose from the ashes, its women, educated, independent, and unbound, carried that same unyielding spirit. They built schools, led social movements, and helped shape a new nation. They were not called sultans anymore, but their fire was the same. Hurrem's legacy had escaped the confines of the harem, crossed the centuries, and become something new, something unstoppable. Today, when you watch the sun set over the Bosphorus and hear the call to prayer echo between the ancient minarets, the stones of Topkapi Palace still remember. The walls that once hid the laughter of queens now hold their silence. But if you listen closely, you can still hear the whispers, soft, ancient, and defiant. "We were not your shadows. We were your flame." From Hurrem to Nurbanu, Kosem to Turhan, and all the way to Nadziketa, each of these women carried the torch a little further through the darkness. Through them, the empire became more than a story of conquest. It became a lesson that true power can live behind curtains, that history is often written in whispers, and that no fire born of courage ever truly dies. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as moving as I did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more tales from history.